It wasn't that long ago that the name Enron was a symbol of American success. It stood for innovation, power, and incredible wealth. Based in Houston, Texas, Enron wasn't just an energy company, it was the energy company. It was voted America's most innovative company by Fortune magazine for 6 years straight. Its towering headquarters was a landmark, a testament to its seemingly unstoppable growth. From the outside, it looked like the very picture of modern capitalism, a place where smart people were making smart decisions and getting very, very rich in the process. But behind the gleaming glass and the impressive stock charts, something was deeply wrong. A culture of arrogance and greed was taking root, one that would eventually consume the company from the inside out. The story begins in 1985 with the merger of two natural gas pipeline companies, Houston Natural Gas and InterNorth. At the helm was a man named Kenneth Lay, an economist with a PhD and a vision. Lay saw a future where energy wasn't just something you dug out of the ground, it was a commodity to be traded like stocks or bonds. To understand how Enron fell, you have to understand the men who built it up, and then hollowed it out. At the top was Kenneth Lay, the chairman and CEO. He was the public face of Enron, polished, folksy, well-connected. He moved comfortably in the halls of power in Houston and Washington, D.C. The real engine behind Enron's aggressive strategy was Jeffrey Skilling. A brilliant, notoriously arrogant Harvard Business School graduate, Skilling joined Enron in 1990 and quickly rose through the ranks. He pushed the company to transform from a simple pipeline operator into a complex trading firm. Then there was Andrew Fastow, the chief financial officer. If Skilling was the architect of the grand vision, Fastow was the master craftsman of the financial trickery that made it all seem real. Fastow was a financial wizard, and his job was to make Enron's balance sheet look as healthy as possible, no matter what the reality was. Together, this trio formed a toxic leadership team. Lay provided the political cover, Skilling drove the aggressive high-risk business strategy, and Fastow engineered the financial schemes that concealed the truth of their failures. So how did they do it? How did a company losing vast sums of money convince the world it was making a fortune? The deception relied on two main tools: mark-to-market accounting and a complex web of shell companies created by Andrew Fastow. Mark-to-market accounting was the first key to the puzzle. Normally, a company books revenue when it actually receives the cash. But Enron rewrote the rules with auditors looking the other way. They used mark-to-market on long-term energy contracts. That allowed them to estimate future profits from a deal that might last 20 years and book the entire projected profit as revenue in the first quarter. It created the illusion of massive, immediate profitability. Enter Andrew Fastow's special purpose entities, SPEs, shell companies that looked independent but were actually controlled by Enron. Enron would sell its failing assets and sell bad debts to those SPEs. The sales created phony profits for Enron and pushed debt off the official balance sheet, out of view. For years, the magic worked. Enron reported quarter after quarter of smooth, predictable earnings growth. For years, the music played on. But by 2001, the cracks were too big to hide. The dot-com bubble had burst. The economy was slowing. Enron's stock began to slide. Jeffrey Skilling, promoted to CEO in February 2001, grew erratic. In August, he abruptly resigned after 6 months. He claimed personal reasons, but he saw the iceberg and jumped to the lifeboat. The catalyst came from within. Vice President Sharon Watkins, who worked under Andrew Fastow, uncovered the accounting shenanigans. She saw SPEs being used to hide billions in losses. Alarmed, she wrote an anonymous memo to Kenneth Lay. She warned the company could implode in a wave of accounting scandals. But the truth was starting to leak out. Journalists, especially at the Wall Street Journal, began digging. They probed Fastow's partnerships. They questioned how Enron always hit its earnings targets. On October 16, 2001, Enron released Q3 results. The numbers were disastrous. A $638 million loss. A $1.2 billion reduction in shareholder equity tied partly to Fastow's partnerships. The magic was gone. The stock price plunged. The SEC announced it was opening an inquiry. Panicked, Arthur Andersen began shredding tons of documents related to Enron audits, a desperate attempt to obstruct justice. On December 2, 2001, Enron filed for bankruptcy. It was then the largest corporate bankruptcy in U.S. history. The collapse was a human catastrophe. In an instant, over 20,000 Enron employees lost their jobs, and they lost their life savings. The company had heavily encouraged them to invest their 401k retirement funds in Enron stock. Then, as the scandal unfolded, The company froze their accounts, preventing them from selling. While executives were quietly cashing out, the public outcry for justice was deafening, and the government responded. Federal prosecutors launched a massive investigation, leading to the indictment of several top executives. Andrew Fastow, the financial mastermind, pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate with the government, testifying against his former bosses in exchange for a reduced sentence. The trial of Kenneth Lay and Jeffrey Skilling in 2006 was a landmark event. They maintained their innocence, claiming they were unaware of any fraud and victims of a few rogue employees. The jury didn't buy it. Both were convicted on multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. Lay died of a heart attack before he could be sentenced. Skilling was sentenced to over 24 years in federal prison. The Enron scandal sent shockwaves through the business world and led to significant changes in the law. In 2002, Congress passed the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, the most sweeping reform of American business practices since the Great Depression. The law created new standards for corporate accountability and imposed stricter penalties for fraud. Today, more than 2 decades later, the story of Enron serves as a powerful cautionary tale. It's a reminder of what can happen when ambition turns into arrogance, and when the pressure to succeed at all costs overwhelms a company's moral compass. The laws may have changed, but the temptations of greed remain. The legacy of Enron is a permanent warning etched into the history of American business, that trust, once broken on such a massive scale, is incredibly difficult to rebuild, and that no company is ever too big or too powerful to fail.